you buy precious metals consistently. You don't just load up when the prices start going up. Can you explain to us kind of your investment strategy when you buy, how much you buy, and how much you allocate from your net worth into precious metals?
Yeah,
How
sure.
much you recommend?
Yeah, first rule of thumb for any investment is try to do it before the price is really moving up. Now, it's good to buy into an up market because you've identified a trend and you say, oh, I can buy into a positive trend and there's a chance you're going to make a return. But gold dealers like myself and my industry colleagues, we were also in business in 2013, 14, 15, 16, 17 when the market was relatively quiet and investors really weren't paying attention to gold and the price was like 1,000, 1,100, 1,200. That's really when investors should be buying gold, is pre-crisis. Don't wait for the shit to hit the fan before you buy the gold. You should really be accumulating beforehand. But anyways, my personal strategy is to allocate a certain percentage of my net worth to precious metals. So let's say in my case, I'm a little bit longer precious metals. So let's say I allocate about 30% of my net worth towards precious metals. Maybe higher than most people would. Maybe they're 10 to 20%, or they should be. So I recalibrate that based on what's happening in my personal life and my other investments. How are they performing? If my net worth happens to be increasing, then I'm definitely adding to my position to keep that 30% allocation. Last year, I bought a new home with my wife. We had to invest quite a bit of money in our down payment and so on and so forth. So we had to actually sell some of our precious metals. Our net worth got temporarily, or our available cash temporarily decreased because of the new house. So we liquidated some of our precious metals, but basically kept that 30%. So that would be during a normal market. And then you enter these kind of crisis periods and you say, okay, is this an opportunity to kind of double down on precious metals? And if you have an appetite for risk, and maybe if you are in a position where you're not dependent on those funds as part of your retirement, or kind of you have a very fixed income schedule. If you're a little bit younger, maybe, and you can take some risks, and maybe now is a good time to also say, hey, I'm going to allocate some additional cash flow and speculate on precious metals. So it's no longer just wealth preservation, which is, let's say, that 30% that I have, that's my wealth preservation. Long term, this is now I'm in speculation mode. Maybe I'm buying silver at 13, 14 bucks an ounce. I'm selling it at 18. I'll take some profit and I'll try to repeat that through this market. You could do that. And you don't necessarily have to use physical precious metals to do that. Physical is an amazing way long term to accumulate. But if you're speculating, you might try to use another vehicle like an ETF or a fund or something like that.
That's a great point about differentiating between your kind of preservation of your wealth versus your speculation investment side. So you were just saying, besides the physical products, you could maybe try other ways to speculate. Can you speak a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I mean, look, physical precious metals at the end of the day, and if you watch our other videos on the YouTube channel, Inside the Vault, you have a good sense of how real these things are. There's no better way to protect your wealth than to have a physical commodity that's your personal property. And that's basically what you're buying. When you're buying physical metals, you're buying it's considered personal property. So you're acquiring personal property and you're putting it in a very safe place, whether that be inside the United States, whether it be offshore. You've got physical property that's safe, it's taken care of, it's insured. There's no better way really to protect an asset or money than to do it that way. But there's also a cost, obviously, to acquiring the physical precious metals, and there's a cost to store the physical precious metals. That's fine if you're investing over a long period of time, like anything more than 2 to 3 years, 5, 10-year plan. Physical precious metals makes a lot of sense because any costs that you're incurring to acquire them get washed out over the period of time that you hold them, and it's money well spent. But when you're trying to make a profit in 30 days, speculating on the silver price, paying a $4 premium for a 1 ounce round, and then trying to sell it at spot, you're not going to make any money. So I would recommend in that case, you probably look either at an ETF, an electronically traded fund, or even like a fund that you're like a mutual fund, like a precious metals mutual fund, which might be a mix of mining stocks, physical, paper gold. There's a lot of things that exist out there that allow you to speculate. Just make sure that you pick wisely, because personally, I tried speculating on an oil ETF recently.
Oh, wow.
A lot of people did. The oil price was crashing. I'm like, I'm going to load up on oil. And I picked two ETFs, one in the US, one in Canada, and both have gone through just horrendous management problems over the last 30 days. One of them actually closed. So they just sent me my money back basically. And so things like that actually do happen in the paper market, in the ETF market. Funds are mismanaged, things go awfully wrong. They close them down. Whereas that can't happen on the physical side. It is a physical thing that exists in the world, and nobody can do anything with it without your permission. So just pick your alternatives wisely, I guess, is my advice.
Yeah, that's good advice. Okay. At what point would you generally recommend, let's say you had a client, small scale investor, not like an institutional investor, at what point would you recommend them to look beyond, let's say, holding their precious metals or storing it in their house or garage or basement or wherever, in a safe in their house or safety deposit box in their bank? What point would you say they should consider like a vaulting option?
It's I guess it's a little bit relative to how safe you feel in your own home. Obviously some people live in these palaces, very fortified properties, and they can afford a very large safe, that they could probably tolerate a little bit more risk than someone who might be living in an apartment building or a neighborhood that's experienced crime. So obviously you want to think through some of these basic things, which you probably would have done by the time you bring this stuff home anyways. But generally, as a general rule, my threshold and my personal comfort level as well for my family would probably be about $10,000. Because it's not so much that I feel like I'm going to get robbed. It's just that if something does happen to go wrong and someone breaks into my house, which has happened in my life before, and they get my $10,000 worth of silver or gold, whatever I'm storing at home, chances are my insurance isn't going to cover that, because it's really hard to take out personal insurance, homeowners insurance, for precious metals. So you're looking at a straight loss. It's not like, oh, they broke in, they stole it, and I got my money back. It's like, oh, they broke in, stole it, and it's zero. Like I have nothing. So how much risk are you really willing to take, where you might not get anything back? So I would probably say golden rule, like for me personally, is $10,000. But if as soon as you start losing sleep over it, or you start thinking about it all the time, or you start getting nervous, it's time to make a choice and probably start thinking about a private storage solution.
Yeah, for sure. I guess there's a debate on the internet, which I've seen a lot, which is gold an investment, or silver or other precious metals? Mm-hmm. There's actually a lot of people who own gold and silver who say that it's not an investment, it's only a storage of wealth. Mm-hmm. But yet, obviously, if you take certain, and usually they'll take like a certain time period. They'll start, let's say, like you were saying, mid 2010s when the price was lower, and then they'll end up right before the stock market went down, and they'll say like, in this period you would have lost this much metals. But what do you think about that? Because there's obviously some periods where if you purchase precious metals, for instance, in the year 2000, and then you held them until now, you'd have more than if you invest in the stock market.
Yeah, no, I've heard the argument, and the first thing I'll say is that I personally I would never position gold versus stock market. It's not one or the other. You should own both. You should own stocks and you should own precious metals. There's a time to be longer in one, there's a time to be longer in another. There's times where each market is undervalued and you should be buying. Yeah. Of course, gold does not pay you any interest, and it does not pay you a dividend. So as per like the more traditional way of thinking, it's not an investment in that sense. It is definitely not an investment like any other type of investment that you'll come across. So then it tends to fall into the store of wealth category, which I personally believe is correct anyways. My mentor taught me that gold was really wealth insurance. That was his kind of term that he coined during his career, and it made a lot of sense. It's like house insurance in the sense where you don't ever want to have to use it, but the day that your house burns down and you have a good house insurance policy, you're really happy that you paid the extra premium to have it. The same is true with gold. It doesn't earn you the interest, the dividends during a slow market for gold is going to be relatively flat. It might even cost you a little bit of money to own it. But you're in a crisis period, give me one asset that you'd rather own than gold. you know, and I'm not just saying that because I'm a gold dealer. You listen to any experienced investors, guys like Ray Dalio, you know, you've got commodity traders on Wall Street that are anti-gold 9 out of 10 years, and right now they're all talking up gold and they all love gold. And so I think to answer the question, baseline, you know, it is not a traditional investment. I totally agree with that. Yes, there are times you can speculate, and if you're speculating and earning a return, I'd consider that an investment. But overall, it's wealth insurance. It's wealth protection and preservation. Yeah. So.
Yeah. Can you